So hello and welcome to this industry-oriented workshop called Best Practices for Solar Employers in Alberta. We're delighted to have so many industry folks register for this event. Please note that we are recording this webinar for future distribution. My name is Heather McKenzie and I'm the Executive Director at Solar Alberta. Just want to take a minute to acknowledge that I'm hosting you today and working day to day from Amiskwaciy-Waskahegan, also known as Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which is located on Treaty 6 territory and the homelands of the Métis Nation. Treaty 6 territory is the traditional gathering place and home of many Indigenous peoples, including the Papache's, Nehiyawak Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Blackfoot, and Nakota Sioux, nations whose ancestors have cared for and nurtured these lands since time immemorial. Today, I'll be interviewing Tyler Jackson and Christian Luden. Following my interview with them, there will be a question and answer period in which you can all participate, and the entire session will wrap up in 1 hour. In an effort to increase accessibility, we have enabled closed captioning for this session. You can turn the captioning on in the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. During our Q&A period, we'll be using the Zoom Q&A for questions rather than the chat box. So please enter your questions in that section, and also just click on the little thumbs up symbols to upvote any questions that you like. Before moving forward, just going to do a quick poll to get a sense of who we have joining us today. So please take a minute to answer any of the questions popping up on your screen now. And there we go. Curious how many of you are working in the sector or students. Of course, if there's anyone from the general public here, you're welcome as well. Okay. Looks good. While some folks are still doing the poll, just want to encourage you to take a minute, pop your name, land acknowledgement, contact info into the chat now and throughout the event so that others can look you up on LinkedIn or email you, and hopefully you can form some new relationships. Okay, wonderful. Thanks for participating in that poll. Looks like, as we suspected, the vast majority of you are industry professionals. We do have some students here and some solar enthusiasts as well. So welcome everybody. It's good to get a sense of who we have joining us today. Just going to share a little bit about Solar Alberta in case any of you aren't familiar with us. This is actually our 33rd year of operation. Solar Alberta is a nonprofit society dedicated to accelerating Alberta's transition to a just and sustainable energy future. We do so by advocating, educating, and serving as an industry and community hub for solar energy. Our membership is made up of over 270 individuals and over 155 businesses. We also have over 21,000 followers. We provide a number of services, including managing a solar directory through our website. In this way, we act as a bridge for installers, suppliers, and other solar-related businesses to connect with their customers and clients. Our directory gets over 48,000 hits a year. You can see a screenshot of the directory here on the slide, and there's a link to it in the chat. On our directory, you can filter based on the services provided by our members, the region or the province or the region of the province or country where the member operates. And you can also filter according to the various commitments and certifications that our members have made. So today I'll be interviewing our two members who are certified living wage employers, which is a category you can actually click on our directory. In addition to our website services, we run a number of educational programs, including our Solar Show and our Solar Seminar series. Recordings of previous Solar Show sessions and seminars can be found on our Solar Alberta YouTube channel. We also provide affordable professional development classes and workshops for those in the sector or those transitioning into it. I'm really excited to share that we have an Alberta Renewables Training Info Night on September 25th at 7 p.m. And we're going to feature Alberta's post-secondary educators who have solar-related programs. Registration for that event can be completed through the link in the chat. This fall, we're also once again running a number of online courses for solar industry professionals or those transitioning into the sector. Our online courses are Tuesday and Thursday evenings on 3 to 5 nights over 2 to 3 weeks. You can register for all our upcoming courses at the link in the chat. And recordings of our full slate of courses are also available for sale alongside our paid workshops in the solar training videos section of our website. In other education-related news, we are pleased to announce the third Solar Alberta Diversity Scholarship. This scholarship is intended for equity-deserving individuals And we're going to be awarding $2,000 to one individual registered in an Alberta training program that aligns with our mission. We're accepting applications until October 31st. And we're also looking for a sponsor for this scholarship for the next round. So eligibility details and the scholarship application are available by clicking on the link in the chat. We're very thankful to Enbridge for sponsoring this scholarship. In addition to education-related services, we do provide some upcoming networking events that you can join in. Edmonton Solar Friends and Networking is happening on October 3rd at 1 p.m. at Ale Architect Brewery and Tap Room. We're going to have a welcoming space for all solar curious and enthusiastic champions of green energy, but also green buildings. Welcome there too. Just hoping folks can come out and network with each other. Registration for that can be completed through the link in the chat. And of course, we also advocate for solar, as mentioned in our mission. So we are rising up for renewables. We do have free lawn signs available for pickup in a number of municipalities around our town, also free delivery in 8 different municipalities. So super thankful to our volunteers for making free delivery possible so frequently. And we have template letters for folks to use on our website, asking the government of Alberta to eliminate the new and discriminatory buffer zones that they have established for renewable energy. Your support with our advocacy efforts is super important, and you can click on the link in the chat to make a free sign order or find our template letters today. All right, now my last slide. If you're not already, just want to encourage you to join Solar Alberta as a member. We are constantly evolving our services, some of which include discounts on our courses and workshops, access to member-only content, and of course, individual memberships, only $35, can be purchased at the link in the chat. Business membership starts at $500, and it includes quite a lot of benefits, so have a look if you're interested. Other ways to support our work include volunteering and donating. The links to those are being put in the chat as well. And if you're interested in sponsoring any of our educational events, of course, don't hesitate to email partners@solaralberta.ca to secure a sponsorship. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers for this workshop, the folks I'll be interviewing today. Tyler Jackson from Rocky Mountain Solar. Tyler graduated from the University of Calgary with a Bachelor of Arts degree. Tyler brings over 15 years of experience in human resources in oil and gas, environmental, and healthcare industries. Tyler's well-rounded HR experience, big picture mindset, and ability to build relationships has been the key to success in having a positive impact throughout his career. Outside of work, you'll find Tyler spending time with his family, coaching youth hockey, and playing golf. So welcome, Tyler. Really pleased to have you joining us today. We also have today Christian Luden from CBI Solar. Prior to joining CBI Solar, Christian spent 10 years at the University of Calgary, where he ran student discipline, retention, and skills development programs for the undergraduate and graduate students. Christian also held positions at the university in student advocacy and renewable energy policy research. Christian is a 2-time alumni of the school with a BA in philosophy and a master's in public policy. In 2022, CBI Solar recruited Christian during a construction labor shortage. Emphasizing training, development, and employee retention, Christian oversaw the company's growth from a 20-person residential and commercial solar installer into a utility-scale constructor with the capability to field over 300 workers. So welcome, Christian, as well. Really pleased to have you both joining us today. I'm going to turn my screen share off and have both of you turn your cameras and mics on for the interview section of this webinar. It's going to pull up in my questions here. Okay, Christian, if you could turn your camera and mic on, that'd be great. Thank you so much. Glad to have you both here. And we, of course, have questions that I'm going to ask. And then just a reminder to the audience that we have the Q&A box. We'd love for you to all pop some questions in there. We are using the Q&A box rather than the chat for that purpose. So you can start doing that as things arise for you, or when I turn the mic over to the audience virtually. I'll still read your questions for you. But anyways, go ahead and put some questions in there. All right, so just to get us started here, Tyler, maybe you can start us off. Just wanted you to tell us a little bit about your company. We've heard a little bit about you, but would love to hear a little bit more about your company before we dig in.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Heather. So I work for Rocky Mountain Solar. We are a solar installation company that focuses on residential and commercial properties. I'd consider ourselves to be a startup company. We're 3.5 years old. And this year specifically, we've seen a lot of growth in our business, which is great. When I started here in January, we had 13 employees, and we've actually grown that to about 32 employees to date. So we're growing quite rapidly.
That's a lot, a
Yeah.
big change. And I don't think it's too uncommon in the solar sector in Alberta these days either. So it'll be great to have that perspective and what others will empathize with that kind of growth. How about you, Christian? A little bit about CBI Solar.
Sure, yeah. So we were founded in our current form sometime around 2018. We got our start doing fairly small solar projects, so things like remote or off-grid solar RVs, some homes. Uh, Slowly, we started to take over a shop bay for one of our sister companies, Watts Projects, which had been founded in the 90s as a pipeline construction, oil and gas facility construction company. But now I'm happy to say, as of 2023, Watts Projects actually occupies a small corner of what has become the CBI Solar Shop, which is our primary business. So we now operate a retail solar supply store in Red Deer. We have, I think, about 4 or 5 residential and commercial solar crews, and then our utility scale division uh, takes up a lot of my time and a lot of
Mhm.
our resources.
Yeah, it's good to understand the different scales that everybody's working at. And so, Christian, I understand that you folks are based out of Red Deer, but you do some work elsewhere. Maybe you could each speak to where you primarily work, what regions you work in.
Yeah. On the residential side, we primarily operate within central Alberta, and then on the commercial and utility end, everywhere. I've got a project right now in uh, Acadia Valley, but we've also done projects within the city of Calgary. A couple of utility scale solar farms here
Hmm.
we helped work on.
Okay. And Tyler, how about you folks?
We're primarily in Calgary and area. However, we are expanding to southern Alberta. We have some projects in Lethbridge area. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know there's a lot of solar taking off in Lethbridge. My brother-in-law lives there, and so I get to hear about some of the installs going on around there. All right, so let's touch on best practices. I know you've probably got many, but maybe you could highlight 2 or 3 of your best practices for recruitment and hiring specifically. Tyler, do you want to start on this one and just hear about some of your best practices first?
Yeah, I think in terms of finding the people that fit our culture, when I started, actually, we didn't have any processes from a recruitment standpoint, being such a new company. But we've implemented an employee referral program, which has been a really great success for us right now. Within the industry, it's really hard to find a lot of technical skills when it comes to solar. So really, our goal is to find the right fit for for our culture, and find the right people. And so, what better way to find those people than through our employees that know the culture and the company. So that's one. Um, when it comes to um, sussing out candidates. Really, it comes down to being open and honest with our communication about the role and the culture, so that the candidates have a really good understanding of who we are, and there's a mutual fit there. So those are 2 avenues that we've really focused on when finding the right people and retaining them.
Yeah, it's interesting how that transparency can really smooth the hiring process.
Yeah.
One thing I recently started doing is basically converting my contract into the job description. And so
Right.
you know exactly what you're signing up for because I'm going to flip it into your contract later. And oh boy, does that simplify things on the negotiation side. It's like, yeah,
It,
you saw it all. You
yeah, it
applied.
really is. You have to show, you have to show them, you have to be honest and show them the positives, and that, every company has their downfalls, and being a startup company, we don't have a lot of processes in place, and sometimes we're learning as we go. So
Yeah, no,
yeah.
that's great. So honesty is the best
Yeah.
policy. Thank you for that. And Christian, how about you? What are some of your best practices for recruitment and hiring?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to echo what's already been said. The being open and transparent is really key. I learned early on in working here that um, that there can be, especially when you're experiencing a labor shortage or you feel like you need to staff up a project in a hurry, it can feel like you want to promise people the world when you're trying to recruit them. But that doesn't get you very far, right? Uh, so, so being direct about the working conditions, I think is really important. It's, being up on a roof, for example, is not for everybody. It's really tough to be up there for a lot of folks. I couldn't be up on a roof, so it's important to be aware of that ahead of time. I have this sort of go-to phrase, which is on our utility end, which is you got to be comfortable working outdoors on your feet for 10 hours a day in all weather conditions. And that I think is really key off the start. Um, but maintaining transparency, consistency, and fairness, this is the sort of thing that I think is really helpful when it comes to getting referrals and that sort of thing. It's much easier to unlock those sort of hidden gems from referrals when you sort of have this reputation for treating the workers well and fairly. So
Mhm.
uh, definitely those are pretty key for us as well.
Yeah, again, that transparency piece, it's really interesting to hear you both touch on that because I know that there are some folks who are no longer even applying on jobs if they don't actually see the pay scale referenced in the job application. You know, if people aren't even willing to tell you what they're offering, then what's the point in applying, right? So it's been interesting to see how that's becoming more and more of an expectation that you be transparent and honest with folks about what to expect, both in terms of the conditions and also in terms of the pay. So I just wanted to shift gears here a little bit into my favorite topic always, which is, of course, Alberta living wage certification. I know we became a living wage employer here at Solar Alberta, and we were really tickled when we saw some of our members were also on the list. So I'm just curious how being living wage certified, how does that factor into your hiring process? Does that impact your process at all? Do you ever get folks coming in who actually that's one of their considerations? Christian, do you want to start this time?
Yeah, I think so to a certain extent. As I said, we let me put it this way. I absolutely hate recruiting. I think a lot of people in HR hate recruiting. Um, it it it's exhausting. It takes up a whole bunch of your time, etc. So if you can create a scenario where your workers want to come to you, whether that's because of having decent livable wages or whatever, that makes a big difference. But to look at it another way, my biggest goal is always going to be retention. Um, and if I want to retain my workforce, I need them to be able to pay the rent, right? They can't come to work if they're struggling to pay their bills. So um, then I have to go back into into recruitment mode. So there's a lot of benefit to that, I suppose, and from that perspective.
Mhm.
Um, you spend a lot of time and effort on training workers, especially in this industry where it's not a recognized trade in Alberta. I'm
Mhm.
sure there's electricians, but on the utility end of things, we also hire solar installers that may not be electricians, right? We hire equipment operators as well. And if we're going to go through the effort of training them, right, we want to retain them. So
Mm-hmm.
that that living wage is crucial uh,
Mm-hmm.
for being able to attract talent for sure.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that. How about for you,
Yeah,
Tyler?
yeah, I agree with Christian on that 100%. And I think, you know, in a tight job market as well, it helps candidates make a better decision as well when they know that you know, whether they're a laborer or just coming out of school, that they're going to be getting a fair wage rather than sort of, you know, that minimum wage amount. They're coming in at a higher rate than a lot of other organizations are paying.
Yeah, I was a bit
Yeah.
confused by that because I've actually heard a lot of folks reference a living wage and saying that they're a living wage employer, but they're not certified. And I'm confused as to why they wouldn't get certified. I felt the process pretty simple to go through. I don't know. Was it hard for you folks to go through that process? Obviously, my workforce is extraordinarily different from yours, so maybe I don't understand the realities of that.
You know, that's a great question. I actually wasn't a part of that. We became a living wage before I started, but I don't know why more organizations aren't actually going through that process and advertising that they are living wage employers. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
maybe a bit of a
yeah,
flag if they say that, but don't have the label too. Because it's
yeah.
like, what? Maybe that's, I don't know if that's greenwashing, but that's some kind of washing. Hey, how about you, Christian? Is there anything I'm not aware of though that makes it really hard to go through that?
not that I'm aware of. Similarly, we were certified before I got here, so I didn't really have to do anything on that end. But it was always sort of being used as a as another tool
Mm-hmm.
to help market and try to find people. I can't emphasize enough, there's a lot of training that we have to do for workers.
Yeah,
So if you're going to do that, you want every advantage that you can get in terms of attracting your workforce. So if that means getting a certification, then yeah,
go for it.
absolutely, we'll do it.
Well, it's interesting to hear that you both inherited those certifications. I wonder if it contributed to the recruitment for you, whether either of you looked more favorably on your positions, knowing you could offer that and maybe make your job more palatable.
I'd say so in my case. Yeah,
Yeah.
I worked for a white collar union for 10 years before I got here. So I'm used to, relatively fair wages. Uh, and working for an organization that offers that certainly makes my job a lot easier.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, and I think for me, it aligns with the personal values that I look for, and a lot of people look for when they're um, looking at companies to join, and that's certainly one of them, along with being a B Corp
Hmm.
corporation as well. So
Yeah, Tyler, I know that
yeah,
you folks are B Corp certified, and I do recall that wage and employee standards were a component of that, but it does seem to involve a few other things as well. Do you want to maybe comment on how being B Corp certified factors into your hiring process?
yeah,
Do you have to go above and beyond the living wage? How does that work?
yeah. In terms of compensation, no, but it's really about sort of it's really about putting the success of our organization back into our people, our community, and our environment. So it's not just about profit and making profits. You know, it's investing some of that back into our people and our communities. So, for example, we for every project we sell, solar project, we donate. So we have a charity of choice program where we donate $200 to a few charities that the client will choose on their behalf. So, which is great. I think it's the Alex, the Veterans Food Bank, Kids Sports, and then we have the Animal Rescue shelter as well that we donate to.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have an ESG committee that's run by our employees that help with volunteering commitments and building out a recycling program for our teams. And that's a big factor in why a lot of people look at joining companies nowadays. They want to align their personal values with those of their organizations. So that's a big thing. And I think one of the challenges is when you're trying to align your values, oftentimes there's a setback in terms of making a reasonable living wage, right? And so combining the living wage with the B Corp allows people to find a career that aligns with their values and making a reasonable income.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the commitment to, employees being able to volunteer, because I know Solar Alberta has benefited from, that. And a lot of our members, their staff are allowed to volunteer for us on work time, and they do seem happy about that, to get to spend a little bit of their time doing sort of the public education component, especially if that's not their day to day, a little bit of their time doing the advocacy component. Some of them just love looking up stats for us, and that's been wonderful having that support over the years. So it's definitely something that I see and I get to witness, and I am glad to hear that it also helps with hiring and retention as well. I'm curious, we've talked a lot about some of the best practices and successes. Just wanted to hear a few of your challenges that you've faced. I do hear that it's extraordinarily hard to get enough staff, enough electricians in particular. I think you've mentioned the challenge of having to essentially train everyone. That's a pretty monumental challenge that you would rarely hear about in most sectors, having to actually teach everyone how to do their job. Any other big challenges, hiring challenges that you've faced over the years, and how have you overcome those? Tyler, maybe we'll start with you on this
Sure.
one.
Yeah, definitely finding the technical experience is the biggest challenge. So we do train quite a bit here as well. We have found some success recruiting abroad as well. So in other areas, in Eastern Europe, for example, we have they're a little bit more advanced in terms of their solar and experience. So we've actually hired a group of Ukrainian workers who have years of experience that have come in and helped build our technical base and help train some of our newer employees as well. So that's been pretty successful for us.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Christian, how about you? What are some of those challenges that you've been working on overcoming?
Yeah, exactly that. So there's the labor shortages in the greater construction industry. It's not really something that I personally feel a challenge. Like I don't feel like there's a labor shortage, even though I believe stats show that there are. Um, but the lack of standards for solar training, I think, is related to that challenge. But however, um, you can use that to your advantage, and that's what we've been doing, which is to really just take the long-term perspective on
Mm.
on employment. So if you are thinking about this as an opportunity to develop like the first generation of Alberta solar installers, you get that opportunity to shape what the industry is going to look like.
Mm.
And there's a lot of benefit in doing that. People recognize uh, the the company name. They recognize the culture that we uh, have for our workforce, and I think that there's a lot of potential benefit. It is it is painful in the short term. I think in my first year working here, I hired something like 300 or 400 workers. Um, but you find those people, you invest the time, um, and then you end up having a highly skilled, highly trained workforce.
Mhm.
Um, I will add, similarly, we did take advantage of many folks coming from Ukraine as well. Some folks may not be aware, but they had a much more mature solar industry out that way. And a lot of our workforce on the utility end that came from Ukraine had existing solar experience doing work in Poland and other parts of Central Europe. So,
Mm.
Just finding
Interesting.
those creative places to hire.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I know that one of the challenges I've heard that's specific to utility scale, and I don't know if you see this a lot, Christian, but I've heard of some folks shying away from applying there because they're concerned that it'll be similar to the oil and gas lifestyle where it's kind of work camp, where you're spending so much on hotel and travel that you're really not taking anything home at the end of the day and you're not able to see your family. And so a lot of people I've heard are trying to kind of avoid that lifestyle of working on the utility scale. Have you found any ways to overcome those challenges of people having to spend their whole paycheck on travel and not seeing their families?
Yeah, I mean the spending their whole paycheck on travel is outrageous. So we do a lot of remote work. Our project in Acadia Valley is a camp job, so we have about 100 people on that project who spend 10 days away from home at a time, and that is tough. Um, we don't want them to spend all of their money on travel and all the rest of that stuff. So one of the things that we consider is we've organized group transport from a couple locations where our uh, workforce is coming from. So operating throughout Alberta, our workforce comes from everywhere. We've got folks from Edmonton, Calgary, Red Deer, Lethbridge, and Medicine Hat. So we coordinate that. We get their travel taken care of so that they're not worrying about their gas money or whatever. Um, and crucially, you know, we organize events for our workers who are out in these remote camps. I myself go out there to visit, either myself or a member of my team will visit at least once a month, spend a couple of days out there and talk to workers. Um, there's always a concern about worker morale at our company, so just making sure that the workforce is happy, you know, managing and coping with the lifestyle. But again, you know, just to sort of bring it back to what we talked about at the beginning, it's really important to be honest and transparent about what the work is, right?
Mhm.
This is a there are areas of this work that can bring you far away from home, much like the oil and gas industry can. Um, and you want to get the you know, you want to be honest about that, but you want to overcome some of the negatives that maybe have been associated with it. I
Mhm.
don't know about the rest of you folks, but my perception about oil and gas has been a sort of toxic work environment. Um, where you know there might be hazing or some other stuff going on. Um, that's just not the sort of thing that we do, and we put a lot of emphasis into workplace culture and maintaining a high morale. So it's a bit of a rambly response there, but I hope you got what you wanted out of it.
No, it's super helpful because I was thinking too about the impact of work camps on the broader community. And like you said, the reputation of oil and gas has not been good in that regard. And so I was trying to think, well, how can we make sure our solar work camps don't end up with that same reputation? And it seems to me that if the workers are happy and you know, not being mistreated, then there's a lower chance that they'll be mistreating those around them who might
It,
be living in remote communities.
I'll add, you know, it's important to also engage with the local community. So our camp is in the town of Oyen, right? And we communicate with the town. We try to attend events. We try to get our workforce out to attend to events so that they know who we are. They see us around town. You know, we have strict rules about not speeding around town. It's
Mhm.
little things like that that leaves the community with a good impression
Mhm.
of the company while we're out there. And I think that that will go a long way to improving our industry reputation across the province for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, HR has ripple effects, doesn't it? It can impact so many elements of our reputation. Yeah, I was thinking about that because we have some solar installers in our neighborhood right around Christmas, and they were happy. And it was like really cold, and I was thinking they had the worst job in the world, but I remember seeing them and they were just genuinely happy and smiling and laughing together. And I just remember thinking, wow, you know, that's really nice. And I feel better about that about things, knowing that they're obviously taking their warming breaks. They're obviously doing what they need to stay happy in that cold weather environment. So, of course, we did order Solar Alberta toques as a result, because I thought, well, we might need to start getting our members all geared up for if we're working through the winter now. I know when I started, it was much less common to have folks up on roofs at Christmas, but nowadays it seems like it's a year-round sort of endeavor. We just have that much demand. Tyler, anything to add
It,
on this
it's
topic?
it's amazing how much swag goes with our people. It's quite amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. The swag market and the solar installers having to work year round seem to go well
Yeah.
together. Oh, great. Well, so thanks for chatting through some of the challenges. I know those are always awkward to talk about, but I think it's important that we, again, like you said, be honest about some of the challenges too. It's not always the easiest job. I know when we were preparing for this interview today, you folks mentioned that retention is often very different than hiring and recruitment. So just wanted to touch on some of your best practices for retention. I know you've both alluded to that, but Tyler, do you want to touch on that one more time in case there's anything we
Sure.
missed?
Yeah. Outside of the total compensation aspect of what's important for people, we really do want this to be their careers, and we do focus on that. And it comes down to communicating fairly regularly about their growth. And so we meet quite regularly, almost every quarter, with every employee, with regards to how their progress is going and where their career goals are. We ask them about their personal goals and where they see themselves in 1 to 3 years, and it really gets them engaged in sort of their growth within Rocky Mountain Solar. So we haven't really had much retention issues here in the last year. Granted, we're fairly new, but we've had some pretty good engaged employees. We
Interesting.
also, yeah, and we also, in terms of keeping them engaged, we are going to be rolling out an engagement survey, an employee engagement survey here in the next month or so to gather their feedback and make any necessary changes that we need to based on the feedback.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
rolling that out a couple years
yeah,
ago here at Solar Alberta, and it's been really insightful because there are
yeah,
things, especially shy people. There are
yeah,
so many of them who just don't really feel like saying something to your face, but they'll share their ideas in a survey, and it's actually super helpful. One of them told me in the survey, we should do this on a routine schedule so that it's anonymous and you don't know exactly who's doing it, because I'd been just sending it out on their anniversary dates
yeah,
and whatnot.
yeah,
And I thought, yeah, that's a really good idea. So, again, they didn't share that verbally, but they would put it in a survey. So
yeah, yeah. And
now
it's
it goes out every
amazing.
6 months.
It's really enlightening in terms of what feedback that you get that you've just never thought of before. So
Mhm.
we're looking forward to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. How about you, Christian? What are some of your favorite retention strategies?
Yeah, again, it's pretty similar. I get the sense that Tyler and I have a similar approach to to HR. So, meeting pretty regularly with our workforce is pretty key. You know, doing uh, doing some kind of assessment on work performance is also key. Not because I'm trying to be critical of workers, but just to sort of figure out where they're at, and figure out what their goals are and where they want to advance. So we do, on the utility end, especially, we do like a quick review of a worker after they've started,
Mm-hmm.
and we will sit down with them and help them set goals, that they can achieve, that are achievable goals,
Mm-hmm.
um, so that they can, reach the sort of place where they want to be in the company. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're not happy with their starting wage and they want to work their way into a crew lead. So we're going to sit down with them and we're going to talk about, okay, this is what a crew lead does. These are the types of tasks and skills you want to work on. Here's some training that you can pursue to achieve that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what I find, kind of interesting about this topic is I've mentioned I came from a white collar union. Um, and the reason why I think that's so interesting for this job is there prior to working here, I had no idea what the differences were in labor law for construction employees versus just about everyone else. So, for example, I can terminate just about any construction employee for just about any reason on a whim without any real notice. Um, so who needs to follow a disciplinary policy when there's no legal requirement to do so? I would say being fair, being consistent, following those policies, showing not just telling your workforce that you're committed to these values, but showing them that you are by time and time again being consistent in how uh, deal with issues as they arise, I think is really key.
Mhm.
So I guess my thought is that if you operate your company in a kind of way where your employees can trust you, they feel that they can grow with you, that's the sort of place where they want to stay and they want to work, right?
Yeah, it's interesting that, the labor laws in Alberta, even even outside of construction, even in, the nonprofit space where I am, the bar is so low that basically what I've done is taken our HR policy and just said, these are the bars you can expect. It's not just a repetition of the law. It's, well, here's the law, and this is all the places where we plan to go above and beyond, because but end up having to reference other jurisdictions to find those examples.
Right.
And it's sad, really, that we have so much freedom here to abuse staff, but it's nice to see different companies setting their own bar, setting their own policies, and saying we're not just gonna go for the lowest common denominator here, people. And why should we, when, as you know, we do need people to work. It's
But
not like we have a million people applying for every job, right? We shouldn't be taking advantage of folks from an ethical perspective, but also from the needs of the solar sector perspective.
and I think it's a well-known trope by now that it's cheaper to retain an employee than it is to hire and retrain.
Yeah.
So just bearing that in mind, right, there is a business case for focusing on retention, right?
Mhm.
So you're absolutely right. You don't need to rush to the lowest common denominator
Mhm.
by any means.
That said, some employers don't even follow the letter of the law. So for some of them, that's a good place to start. Now, I've asked you quite a few questions, but I see that the Q&A box is being populated here. So I want to get to our audience questions today. Thank you, everybody, for starting to populate the Q&A box. Just a reminder, you can upvote each other's questions. So if there's something you really like there that you want us to get to before 11, make sure you click the little thumbs up symbol. So Gabrielle's wondering, what is the best methodology to use for performance ratio, which can easily be included in operations and maintenance contracts? I am hoping the two of you know more about that than I do, because I certainly haven't done a lot of those in the Solar Alberta context. Christian, any thoughts on methodology for performance ratio?
Uh, yeah, I mean, it's not really my, my area of expertise,
Yeah, you
I'll
can
I'll
defer.
acknowledge.
You
Yeah.
can, that's okay.
I would say the same thing.
Yeah.
I would defer. I wouldn't want to provide something that it may be a little bit inaccurate. So
That's just fine. Who do
yeah.
you think would be good folks to go to for something like that? If you were to refer someone onwards, would there be a legal expertise or something there? It's in the world of O&M
Yeah.
contracts, so I feel like operations and maintenance contracts is definitely a little bit above and beyond your typical HR practices, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I know we've had a couple workshops touching on O&M, but it is hard to get answers for that. And I've actually been finding that a little bit challenging in the sector. Is you two are kind of rare. Often when I say, hey, would you folks like to come and teach others in the sector about something, for example, like O&M contracts. People will say, no, those are all trade secrets. We don't share. And so I just wanted to say, I appreciate you two coming today so much, because the trade secrets thing is pervasive. And I think it's really holding the sector back in many ways. Because whenever we're trying to do public education and industry education, we hear that a lot. Can't share, top secret, secret sauce sort of thing. And I keep thinking, uh-oh, if these are all secret sauce, then we're in trouble. But I appreciate you two sharing today. Garth has a question here. Being a small startup company myself, I do not have the ability to get the larger commercial solar jobs to sustain me through the winter months, as solar is seasonal. How do you keep your employee retention up during the slower times? That's an interesting question, Garth. Tyler, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, we do residential work right through the winter. Obviously, it is seasonal, so when it's -40 out there, we don't expect our employees or people to be out on the roof and doing that. There is usually a lot of electrical work that goes into the solar, so we can do that through the winter months. We really do try to focus on our training and development in the winter months when it is colder as well. We encourage our apprentices to go back and get their classes completed. We'll conduct training here. We have uh, a roof that we've sort of built where we can practice on installing racking and panels. So we'll do some of that training through the colder winter months.
That was actually one of our members suggested we make our courses available as pay per download, because they use them as snow day professional development.
Yeah.
So they have our videos and they pay for their staff to watch our courses on snow days. And that's been a really neat idea, and we're really excited they're doing that. So Christian, how about you? How do you sustain folks through those winter months?
Yeah, we have the benefit of building utility solar as well. So we actually do some of our best work in the winter on the utility side. So we can always shift some of those residential installers to the field if they're interested in doing that kind of work. It hasn't really been a huge issue for us. The other thing is that a lot of our residential installers in particular would tend to be electricians. So they might be students who are going to go to school after the season is over, and then they're looking for a place to come back to do their next year of training. So it hasn't really been a huge issue for us. It's been basically nonstop for work for us since I've been here. So over 2.5 years. So that end of things hasn't been an issue. But I do empathize with those folks who are maybe a little bit smaller, operating those smaller residential only installation companies.
It does seem to be a challenge just in the first few years for a lot. And then once they kind of get over that hurdle, there's sort of a little something they can always do throughout the winter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting how that shifts with the longer you're in business, hey? Even your two companies, you really haven't, I think you both had origin stories that were within the last 10 years, but so hopefully this is just inspiring to others who are just getting started to know that that they're not too long out from probably having full year-round work. So that's the dream, right? Paragon's here today. Thanks. Welcome, Paragon. Any tips for remote salespeople? Anyone we've found with sales design experience has been a disaster remotely, but we are in a northern Alberta oil town, so there aren't a lot of locals with experience. So remote salespeople, questions around that. I'll tell you one thing I've heard, and I'm sure this question goes well beyond this, but I've heard from a lot of salespeople that they can't sign up without a base wage. They really need a base salary. Some of the best salespeople out there can't just work on commission alone. So that's something I've heard in my feedback from folks who are looking to work in the sector. Other tips for remote salespeople in general, though, Tyler, Christian?
That's a tough one. All of our sales folks are in the office here and in Calgary. But yeah, we do offer a base salary. We don't just strictly work off of commission. There is commission eligibility when it comes to compensation for our sales folks, but it is difficult because you do need to get out there and build relationships with customers, and being remote it just adds another complexity to that.
Mm-hmm. Christian,
Yeah.
anything to add on that
Yeah.
front?
Same with us. All of our
Yeah.
sales folks are full-time salaried employees that are dedicated to doing this work. So we don't actually operate on any kind of commission sales in our company. We get a lot of our sales through positive word of mouth, actually. It's
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's pretty amazing. And then on
Mm-hmm.
the design end of things, again, we've had a lot of luck just trying to find the right person with the right attitude and then training them.
Mm-hmm.
Because as I've said, it's a challenge to find folks with the right experience, or if they do have the right experience, um, being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, and I feel like we could
Yeah.
probably run an entire session just on who can and who can't work remotely, because that is always a big question these days. Who needs to be in the office? Who can work from home? That's something the federal employees are having to wrestle with right now too. So in both your cases, though, you've got your sales folks in-house coming in, not working remotely, hey? That's
Correct. Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting to hear. Did you ever try the remote thing?
We have not. No, we have not. We're sort of in-house, and I think we work better as a team when everyone is in the office. Um, and to Christian's point, finding an experienced solar sales individual is extremely difficult. So there's a steep learning curve, and being around our project and operations team and our design team, it helps with that. So
They can learn a
yeah,
lot, so they're
with
not
that,
accidentally spreading misinformation.
right.
That's really important. We've learned through the news media lately is sometimes when those sales folks are spreading misinformation, it kind of hurts us all. So definitely important to get everybody on the same page. Thanks for that. When hiring internationally, did you come across any concerns or issues with language barriers, mainly in terms of safety and training? Christian, I see you smile, so I'm going to go to you
I,
first.
I love this question. Yeah,
Yeah.
because we've hired a lot of folks with international experience, and language sometimes can be a challenge. In the case of Ukrainians, because that is a large workforce that I think some folks have tapped into. Um, my biggest secret, my secret weapon was hiring a talented Ukrainian HR recruiter to assist with uh, finding the right workforce, so the people with the right skills, but also working on making sure that our training materials were appropriately translated and understood by our workforce for exactly that sort of reason, considering the safety and that sort of thing. So that's actually something I'm quite proud of. It's something I wasn't telling everyone at the start of my time here, but we've
Mm.
because I didn't want them to know. But now I think the
Yeah.
cat's out of the bag.
The cat's out of the
Um,
bag.
yeah.
Well, and it's true that safety standards can be very different around the world too. I mean, there are, for example, in the construction trade industry, in my neighborhood, it's a new neighborhood, and I'll see a lot of folks coming to put up new homes who are not wearing harnesses. They're not doing any of the safety precautions. And often they're being brought in on temporary foreign worker programs. They're not even aware of our local standards. I certainly haven't seen that issue with the solar installers in my neighborhood, even on the, new builds. So I feel like as an industry, construction folks, we're maybe getting through to a lot more people than others are. But how about for you, Tyler?
Yeah, I do have a little bit of a secret weapon in our office as well. We have a project manager that's um, from the Ukraine as well, and fluent in English, and obviously Ukraine. who helps out, but we also we actually do a group training specific to safety. For it's a language ESL training, but it's specific to um, safety and on roofs. And so we do that um, quarterly with we've also hired a group of folks from the Philippines as well who
Mm.
have come in, and so we've taken them through the training specific to safety.
Yeah, in their
Yeah,
language. What a great
yeah,
idea. I think it's really neat to just tailor it to the folks you have and not expect them to suddenly miraculously learn how to install solar and learn English all at the same
right,
time. So
right.
that makes a lot of sense. Well, thanks for thinking of that. What are some ways your companies support underrepresented slash equity deserving groups such as women or newcomers? I would also add Indigenous folks. I'm not seeing a lot of them represented on the rooftop solar side of things. So, although I know there are many in the utility scale side of things. But yeah, maybe you could talk a little bit about your companies and how you're bringing more people in the sector. I always say, when people accuse me of having a woke agenda, I always say, you know what? We're never going to have an energy transition if we leave half of our population on the sidelines. So, from my perspective, it's about bringing everyone into the field. Tyler, any techniques you have for incorporating underrepresented folks?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're working with a Center for Newcomers to help us be more represented. The challenge we're having, quite honestly, is with the female workforce in our for our installers, and that's something that obviously we'd like to focus on. We currently have out of 20, we currently have 2 females working for us. One is actually a crew lead, which is great. But working with different associations to help with that recruitment has been helpful.
Yeah, finding those
Yeah.
partners. Christian, how about you? And I guess in your context, Christian, I have one other question as a related one. I've heard that getting women into the trades in general is much more successful if you do cluster hires and then they don't feel like they're going to be alone on a team of men. Have you guys tried that in the field ever and had folks, women working together so that they don't feel so alone?
Yeah, we have, I don't know the number right off the top of my head, but we have a fair number of women working on our projects now out on the Big Sky Solar project. Um, so possibly we accidentally did what you were talking about there, Heather. Frequently when I hire for those projects, I'm doing an orientation for say 20 people at a time. And I get 20 people in a room together, and they all see each other and they notice each other, etc. But similarly, we also work with, the Center for Newcomers. We also, put our feelers out there to find folks who want to come work in the industry. But I think it's also crucial to staff your office, not just the field, with equity serving groups, because it creates a sort of it makes it feel like it's an environment where everyone belongs, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. If
Yeah.
you only see men in the office, then you're going to think that that's no place for women to go, and that's that's not what we want. So, being intentional about what we're looking for and giving people opportunities to move up, maybe it's from the field into the office. All of that is essential.
Mhm.
Sorry, what was the other part of your question there?
Oh no, you touched on it
Oh,
first.
I did.
The
Okay.
cluster, whether you
Oh,
tried
right.
cluster hires. I just thought at your scale you might be able to because I know at the smaller scale, the idea if you only have 20 employees and then you try and do 5 new employees at one time, all women,
Right.
that might not work. But if you have 200 coming into a project, it might be easier to make a team of folks who feel like they won't be subject to any harassment or discrimination. So.
Yeah, and being responsive to the needs of our workforce. So I'll give you, it's not exactly um, on the topic of equity serving groups or deserving groups. I was on a project where we ended up hiring a very large number of Muslim laborers. And our company didn't have a lot of experience with the Muslim community. But what we noticed very quickly was that things like time for prayer was really important to this group. So we adjusted our breaks to allow them to pray during Ramadan. And it was something that was like so simple to do, but it made all of the difference in terms of retention, right? These folks didn't have to feel like they were deciding between their religious practice and earning a living. So there's small, it's a cluster of small things. There's no one.
Yeah, no one ticket.
Yeah.
No.
It's, oh, sorry, Tyler.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think Christian's bang on. It's really about the flexibility and having potentially a single mother who needs to deal with childcare, coming into work a little bit later, or leaving a little bit earlier. Just being flexible to that and understanding, and yeah.
Yeah, flexibility and culture, the two things I hear a lot. And one thing we had to discuss recently is when you say sick day, does sick mean you're sick or
Yeah.
does sick mean your kids are sick? Because often, when we're having to take a sick day, it's because the kids are sick. And so we decided sick day is inclusive.
Yeah.
And so that was a decision we made because that flexibility, it's not necessarily you're going to get a doctor's note, but it's, you're home because there's someone else who depends on you who can't go to school. So it's interesting how you have to start getting just creative and thinking a little bit outside the box, which arguably will benefit everyone, not just the ladies. So I'm sure there are some dads who would also like to take care of their sick kids. So definitely nice to see some of those changes coming in all shapes and forms. I
Yeah, we've
feel like,
changed them.
oh yeah,
We've changed it to personal days from sick days, and so
okay,
that our employees can take them for a mental health day or for when their children are home from school
yeah,
because of a
or
PD day or
they have to go
whatever.
to an
Yeah,
appointment, right?
yeah,
Like sometimes they
yeah,
just need to go see the doctor. They're not even sick,
yeah,
but
It
exploratory.
it's not really any of my business why you need the day off.
yeah,
Yeah,
Sometimes the way
exactly.
yeah,
I look at
Yeah,
it. So
yeah,
if you need the day
exactly.
off, you need the day off.
yeah,
I hope you're well and are able to return to work soon, is sort
Yeah.
of my perspective on it. So
Yeah, no, it's
absolutely.
very, very good. And I could pick your brains for hours, quite literally. This is perhaps my favorite topic. And so I know everybody here has to get back to their desk jobs or their roof jobs or their field jobs. So I'll let you go. It is 11:03 and we promised everyone a nice timely workshop here. So there are additional questions in the chat. If you're open to it, maybe you could throw your contact details in the chat. I'm not going to pressure you to. But I know a couple of people still had questions that we didn't get to today. This is also an indication that we should probably host something like this again in the future. So let me know if you're open to that, because I hate leaving any workshop with questions still in the chat. But really appreciate our audience for their active engagement today. Appreciate you so much, Tyler and Christian, and to your companies for letting you sneak away with us to run this and to share your knowledge with 155 other solar employers in the province. Thank you for that. That is really a gift to us and to our whole province. So thank you for the work you're doing. And hopefully this encourages 153 of our other members to consider becoming living wage employers too. And we'd love to feature some of their best practices in the future as well. So have a wonderful rest of the day. And yeah, look forward to seeing you all at our next workshops. And I will say, our solar show is going to be in February when everyone needs some professional development. So hope to see you all first week of February online. Take some snow days and join us online for the solar show. Have a great day.